Hello, it's Phillip Taylor from Richmond Green Chambers, talking about a very interesting book here, Street Use and the Law by Paul Claydon. It's published by Shaw and Sons, and I'm very impressed with this book for a number of reasons, which I'll talk about in a minute. I've reviewed this extensively in various journals and on the internet, and the varying titles I've given it can be summed up in the phrase sustaining street cred, or sustaining street credibility, because what we're talking about here is pavements, the streets and so forth, and what's going on. And that's very much the work I do both as a lawyer and as a local government elected member. I've been a councillor twice. It's my view that Claydon's book is required reading for councillors, local authority officials, residents associations and lawyers who advise community groups, and obviously anybody involved in taking possible proceedings concerning street related problems. It's a unique book, not a particularly big one, this is just a picture of it. It fits nicely into the pocket actually, and is in my view again a succinct, quick reference guide to the legal problems which affect us on a day-to-day basis. Much of what's in the book makes up the sort of work, the type of personal case that you get as an urban councillor, an advisor or a lawyer, which obviously are the sorts of things that we confront on a daily basis. I certainly have them in my law surgery. It's a manual, effectively, which looks at street use by individuals such as drivers, pedestrians, contractors, cyclists, dog owners, all that particular group of people, and it investigates potential dangers, conflicts of interest, public nuisances occurring in everyday environmental issues and so on. So in short, it's an invaluable guide for members of the public with local residents' problems, the old neighbour problems, which we're quite familiar with. It also looks at community safety procedures, the sort of things that practitioners are involved in with that type of work, and of course the role of residents' associations, town planners, and anything to do in fact with planning law is very useful, and lawyers handling PI and nuisance litigation. I see Paul Claydon's book, Street Use and the Law, as an easy to use set of lists, effectively, which deal with each topic alphabetically, and what he's done is he's put a comprehensive index at the back to give the reader quick access to find where the appropriate legislation lies. Obviously it needs to be kept up to date because we've got a lot of reform taking place at the moment. It's not a heavyweight legal tome though, so don't think that, but it's more of what I would describe as a legal ready reckoner for the street. Each topic points to those parts of a statute which is appropriate to the topic, and there are some very nice summaries which effectively deal with what the law contains in each relevant act, and I think it's great for the busy community solicitor as well. There will of course be critics of this book, which is in reality merely a manual or a guide, but I think it's very useful. It's sort of part of the type of books that Shaw and Son produce, which are extremely helpful for practitioners and those involved in local government. I think it's long overdue to have a book of this nature about community, and I'd certainly welcome it as a friend. With so much going on in at street level within our society, it's not surprising therefore that we need to have something of this nature to identify what our rights are, some years, 10 years in fact now, after the Human Rights Act came in. The book itself has got about 160 pages, so as I say, it's not a particularly big book, and it covers topics such as what type of law will apply. Let's take examples, say for fairground attractions which might obstruct traffic, or dangerous dogs roam the street, or if drains overflow and so forth. forth. So, as I say, it's very practical in its application. The contents go through alphabetically, and they're very detailed. They'll cover most of the areas that you're interested in. You can, of course, cross-refer part of this to something like Stone's Justices Manual. There's a word of warning, though. Don't fall into the trap that many laymen fall into, that the book is an antidote to all the wrongs that befall road and street usage, because it isn't. It's not a replacement, but it's an invaluable aid, I think, certainly to residents' groups. Claydon says in his preface that for a fuller exposition of the law, reference should be made to legal textbooks and other specialist publications. And he gives, in fact, obviously a number of very useful definitions, which really perhaps should be a glossary of terms, if you like, about street law. But I certainly believe that he's been able to cover as much ground as he can practically in the circumstances. Also, of course, the internet today is a key to much of the information, and certainly the type of problem I get in my law centre indicates that sort of problem, and so it's a useful guide for me. As I said, I've described it as unique because it brings together all the problems which have caused me, both as a lawyer and as a counsellor, from parish council upwards, in fact. All of those problems are basically looked at and analysed to a certain extent, so I've got some idea of what the logical legal outcome should be. I'm going to finish where Claydon begins by saying, he writes, whilst not specifically restricted to streets in urban areas, the topics covered are likely to be of greater relevance in such areas rather than in rural areas. And I agree, because we are talking more to do with urban issues rather than rural ones. I've represented people in both urban and rural constituencies, so I do have a feel for that and what has happened over the last 25 years. It's a fine manual for all concerned environmentalists and people who are interested in their community and their environment, and for the street user, and it's certainly something that I advise you to get in the future. Thank you very much. Bye bye.